Hey y'all, this is Aemok,
Madam Hexe,
and kayce.
And this is Trouble Comes in 3. This podcast talks about scandalous topics such as leather, communications, BDSM, and sexual health. If you are under 18, and visit scarletteen.com. But if you're over 18, get ready, tie your corset strings tight, and let's get naughty.
I like that improvisation.
Yes.
Actually. So we actually have our first interview guest for 2021.
Yes!
I'm very excited to introduce a dear friend and the helping hand to my slave in his early experience, Imperatrix Nox. So Nox is a lifestyle Domme who's been active for nearly 20 years. Imperatrix has taught several classes and lectures on various forms of edge play, power exchange, and female dominance. She's an active member and supporter of both the Los Angeles and the Orlando fetish communities.
Yay.
So we welcome you, Nox, to our scandalous evening, I guess.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me.
It's our absolute pleasure, don't worry.
So excited.
So that's kind of your professional intro, but why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself in your own words.
Wow, that's always so difficult, isn't it?
But we assume that you're a queen, I mean, obviously.
It's always sexier when somebody else does it.
Right. Especially when they have a German accent.
Right, exactly. I appreciate that way more than my southern one.
German next time.
Aww.
I'm going to record that at the end.
As a bonus?
That'll be the bonus feature.
Okay. Yes, I
like it. No, so I've been in kink, a really long time. I kind of got my start in a classical manner, especially being female, as close as you can get to being, old guard in some of those respects.
Yeah.
Because do I?
Preach.
Yeah.
I am
Seriously,
also of the been doing this for far too long.
It's, and it's funny because, I talk about my experiences coming up through kink and how my fetishes actually shaped my journey. But I was very fortunate that when I came into the lifestyle, it was as a submissive. And then I did graduate to being a full slave in a 24/7 TPE relationship for quite a few years. And then found my dominant voice thanks to some guidance and some mentoring that I had and the support of my husband, who's also a dominant. And so now I've been the proud owner of several amazing submissives that have let me beat the absolute shit out of them.
That's what we love.
And
It
she's
is.
doing it too.
Oh, I'm sure she
it's serious when the high heels come off.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually at one point taught a class on how to kick someone's ass wearing 6-inch stilettos.
See, this is important information.
That's a class I want to go to.
You want to be the demo bottom for
Well,
it.
yeah, but that's
like,
still going to
You want to
it.
be kicked wearing while you wear 6-inch stilettos.
And will they wear?
That's fair.
It is. It's fun. But yeah, it's interesting because the reality is the aesthetics of kink is what grabbed my attention, right? It was all about what I saw, the representation that I saw in the media, and just these visions of these very powerful, seductive, beautiful women, and not necessarily the glossy ones that you see with a lot of pornography and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But actually going into the community and interacting with people at dungeons and other events and seeing just the realness and the authenticity of some of these women, and just not just what they wore, but what they chose to wear, right? Because it was like armor, and wearing the makeup like it was war paint, and just that fierceness. And that's what led me to corsets, and just the aesthetic of the wasp waist, even some of the Edwardian ones. And it was like, that's it. That's my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I fell in love with corsetry, honestly, more than I did with bondage.
It's on its own,
Yeah.
isn't it, though?
Yeah, it was one of the few things that I could do to myself and nobody looked at me funny. It was like, oh, you're just the goth kid.
Hell
Yeah.
Yup.
Yeah.
Also,
So
I have seen this woman change corsets in the backseat of a car.
Mhm.
It's a pretty phenomenal circus act. But I was like, did you just swap them out? And she's like,
Yep.
I changed my mind.
All right then.
I started with corsets when I was in high school,
Mm-hmm.
one, we were all theater geeks, and two, we were all like medieval geeks.
Oh, that
Like we would, and so for me, I really loved coming into the community because suddenly it was a place that wearing the corsets
Wasn't
weren't
weird.
weird. Like
Uh-huh.
wearing real corsets, not just like the Fredericks of
the
Hollywood.
aesthetic
Like,
ones, you know, the flimsy ones.
yeah.
yeah. I was like, oh, this is the first place that people are like, oh, I love that design, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
I felt strong.
What's on your mind,
Yeah.
Kaitlyn?
Oh no, I was just gonna say because what she had mentioned was very similar to mine. Like I've always loved the aesthetic, and I've always loved like the accentuated, waistline, because I kind of have a very natural hourglass shape.
Yeah,
Glass
same.
shape, but I like the extreme that corsets can take it to. And for me, it was kind of the same thing as like the first time I put the corset on, I was like, it's like bondage, breath play, aesthetic goals, and everything else all in one.
I always feel extra womanly, and like in the
Yes.
classical sense. You know what I mean? I
Yes.
know
Yeah.
identity's on your head, but to me, it's like it has a very classical, like womanly feel when you're wearing a corset.
I just
Myself.
feel more like a boss.
Yeah.
Like a boss.
Yeah.
I was like, holding my tits up and in place. I'm
Right.
ready to go.
Oh, and I wear underbusts
Yeah.
often, so my
Oh,
tits
yeah.
are
Oh,
really
yeah.
held up.
They're flapping around. What's your favorite style of corset, Nox?
Oh man,
You can pick like, I know it's like choosing between children. You can pick
Right.
like
it is.
a couple.
It really, honestly, it really is dependent on what I'm doing and where I'm at. So if I'm going to be primarily social and not engaging in any kind of physical skills, I do prefer the underbust style or like a waist cincher style. Just, the waisties and things like that. If I'm going to be playing, I do prefer overbust because I can get away with one piece of clothing.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So I mean that, and
Pregnant nun in church.
I don't like the girls flopping about when I'm playing.
Right? Return to your assigned seats.
Mine
They just flop.
Yeah, they do what they want to say.
a couple years ago when I did the performance for FPE,
Oh yeah.
Yep.
my tit absolutely flew out of my
They
corset,
pancake
and
jumped.
they were like glued down,
And
and they still like woo.
yeah, they were gonna do
They
their
were
own thing
determined
regardless.
to be free.
I think I obviously got into corsetry because of my mother.
Yes.
Yes.
For those of you that haven't heard us before, my mother's also a lifestyle dominant, but she loves corsetry. She loves corsetry. She actually has a private corseter in the UK that she works with, and has worked with them for years. And I have to tell you, they are pricey, but they're fucking worth it. But you know what I think as a child, why I liked them, why I liked the shape? I played violin. I think it made people look like a violin or a
Yeah.
cello. And
Yup.
for some reason, I
love
was like, I love that. I want to look like, I want
Yeah.
to match my violin. Like, it was a weird childhood thing
That's
that developed
cute.
into a
That's
fascination.
adorable.
I actually really like that.
They were like, oh no.
I want pictures of you as a child in a corset on your butt.
Well, I wasn't in a corset as a child, but like
Damn.
I was probably like 13 when my mom, the little one, not like a
Yeah.
proper, because you're still growing, and your
Right.
organs are still moving around. But
Right.
oh yeah, she definitely encouraged that
Yeah.
that interest.
Yeah.
I can relate to that because like for me, growing up and doing ballet up until adulthood,
Yeah.
that's another appeal of corsets is just what it can do for your posture.
Oh, yeah.
But I also like, especially now that people are getting more adventurous with corsetry, I absolutely love how people are embracing the way that you can now modify your body. So if you want to have a boxier shape, there's something for that. If you want a curvier shape, there's something for that. If you want to minimize something or downplay certain attributes that maybe you're not comfortable displaying, there's something for that. And you didn't used to see that diversity. And so even our clothing is now mirroring, I think, our society. And that to me is exciting.
Oh, I love
That
it.
is pretty exciting.
I feel like it's a whole like renaissance of corsets.
It's a
corsetry,
revitalization.
like, it's a
It is
whole-
definitely there's definitely more energy into people like experimenting with them, because I know like in the I guess in the 80s and in the 90s the corsets, like going back to the comment about being the goth kid, right? So in the 80s and 90s, like fetish goth or and corsetry was a big part of romantic goth kind of culture, and obviously fetish goth and things like that. So you did it, but you were like very kind of ostracized for it. But now you've kind of seen, and I don't know if it's like social media and like everyone has access to all these images and things like that, but people are really, you know, I think it was when the Kardashians came out with the waist trainers, all of a sudden when they did it, it exploded. And as much as I abhor them as individuals, I think it's really great. It's kind of like the book that shall not be named. Terrible product, but it interested a lot of people in our lifestyle. So it was a great introduction, but maybe not the best source material.
Yeah, I have a story for you about that book later.
Okay. Thoughts. So I am partial to the underbust, partially because I haven't been able to get a properly fitted overbust corset for the difference in size between my waist and my breasts.
And the shape of your breasts.
And the shape of my breasts.
It's really the shape that comes down
because
to it.
I can do a regular overbust, but it's cinched very poorly and it's uncomfortable in the not fun way.
Right.
And so I definitely prefer the underbust because it's a little bit easier to get one that's truer to size and that cinches properly. But also I love corset stealthing. Like I'm all for a showy stuff corset, but
like
the corset
wearing it
stealthing,
under your clothes.
Yeah, and so that's a really big thing for me. I actually used to, my first 2 years of college, I used to have basically I'd be at school from essentially 8 hours a day, and then I go to work after. And so I would wear an underbust corset under my clothes because it helped with my posture. Because I realized I do tend to kind of naturally slouch, or especially during class if I'm bored, like lean on a table. And that person who's like, I'm paying attention in writing, but my head's also laying down. And so it really helps with that, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And so there's still what I'm partial to. I would love to get an overbust corset that's actually like
you need to get
made to fit. But
Nox, do you have any recommendations for people that are looking to get fitted for a corset? Do you have like providers that you use? Or you kind of like, I just kind of pick and choose as I go?
I've found people throughout the years, much like your mother, you find places that you know the workmanship, you trust the people, the measurements are sound, and so you tend to go to them over and over again. Unfortunately, one of my favorite corsetiers has passed away, so I don't use that company anymore.
Oh, no.
But I did find and it was just by happenstance, but I've now transacted with them quite a few times. There's a store on Etsy called Mystic City. And
I'll write it down.
Yeah, Mystic City is one of the ones that I have come across lately that has been one of the higher quality. They use better materials. The fit is very true to measurement. They're very great at working with you. So they're very responsive as sellers, which of course Etsy, of course they are. But I've been able to order several corsets from them, and as my weight has fluctuated, I've actually built kind of like a customer profile. And so I've been able to just cold email them and say, hey, listen, you advertise this corset and this fabric. I really like that, but I noticed you're not offering that. And so it is technically like a special order, which I'm more than happy to pay for.
Sure,
but I've literally had no problems, and they have been able to manufacture corsets at incredible speeds. I mean, I've been able to make an order like that on a custom design and get the item itself within like a month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That goes to show you, don't be afraid to ask. If you're working with an artisan or a craftsman of any kind, understand that it's going to cost you, but that's their time, that's their craft, that's their livelihood. But ask. You might be surprised whether they can produce for you.
And it's important to go with somebody that, having started very young in corsets and done all of the worst ideas, you can hurt. If you are wearing a cheaply made corset and you're trying to tight lace it. I definitely almost stabbed my kindies out one time.
Yeah, depending on what it's boned in.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Do you have a boning preference? Nox, do you have a boning preference for your corset?
I do. Okay. I do. I like full steel. I do not like spiral steel.
Okay.
Because I do.
You kind of differentiate those for our audience?
Yeah. So the spiral steel tends to be a little more flexible. It's still a very good quality corset, but it's meant to give you a little bit more movement and breathability as you wear the garment. Whereas a full steel boning is much more in that traditional vein of not being able to bend over correctly, you know, really having to bend from the hips and not the waist. It tends to be far more rigid. And the maintenance tends to be a little more intense, just in the sense that you have to actually check your seaming more often. But I am vehemently opposed to plastic. Not just because of the environment. Well, but not just because of the environment factor, because I mean, obviously that's a big one, but they look like shit.
Yeah.
And I've yet to see, I mean, unless you're wearing it just because, you know, you're wearing it for sex or like a cute photo op, those are really disposable corsets. You wear them once, they're misshapen, you can never get them back. And honestly, if you go on Amazon or any of those mass retailers, almost everything you find is plastic.
Yeah.
And you get what you pay for. I mean, if you see a great corset that's sexy, but it's only $20, that's your clue.
Yeah.
You know, like if a corset costs you under $100, I would ask a lot of questions.
And I have gotten so I prefer the spiral steel, but it's because of my mobility issues.
Right.
I'm hypermobile. The corset gives me support, but also lets my body still do its weird pop out of place less frequently. But when I'm like doing crazy shit with my body, I can still move the upper portion of it. And I have found a couple of places where I've gotten spiral steel for a more inexpensive place, but the ethics behind it are sketch. Like it's a lot of stolen design, and the quality of the rest of the materials are not really great. I definitely agree. Plastic, particularly since I am a curvy girl, the body heat and stays, they will, like she said, in one time it warps, and you'll never, doesn't matter what you do, it will always be like that, particularly if you're trying to do anything more than like just lay it on your body.
Right. If you're not already a perfect hourglass shape and you're trying to tight cinch with a plastic corset, I think this is a failed endeavor. This is not going to do well. Other than like, again, poking your lungs out because it's going to shoot through your fabric and stab you.
And a lot of the ones from costume shops or lingerie shop, like more mass-produced public places, they're not, the corsets themselves aren't cut to be hourglass. No. They're cut on a square body. Right. So when you're trying to tight, everything just goes in the wrong direction because that's not what it's meant to be.
Thoughts, Kaitlyn?
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say that Madam actually stole my stole the thing I was going for. I granted it to her.
Did you? You granted it to me, did you?
To my brain. No. She just like is in my head and just took it. It's fine, hers to take. But no, so it because I was going to bring up, you know, the different boning and stuff because funny you should mention plastic boning getting stabbed to death because the first corset I ever got, actually, if any of the people listening are on my FetLife, my first profile picture, my first picture ever on FetLife, I'm in a Spencer's special of a red corset that I attempted to tight lace because I do have the hourglass shape and I was trying to tight lace it because I couldn't get it to sit right because it was just basically like
scrunching up.
Scrunching up because it wasn't following my body, even though I wasn't super really tight lacing. But so cheap plastic. I was in the middle of Ren Fair. I was going with a play partner at the time. It was our first like public debut. And so we were going to Ren Fair, and we actually ran into a few of his coworkers and things like that. And I was like, oh great, I look like a whore. Perfect.
Isn't that the idea?
That's kind of the idea. We're in the middle of Ren Fair in Florida in March, which is generally, honestly, very hot. Yeah. I think it was like 95 that day.
Yeah.
And we're walking, and all of a sudden, the two side pieces of the boning just snap.
Oh.
And I was like, well, that hurt.
Well, that hurt. Am I dead?
They didn't like cut me or anything, but you know, they're weird and misshapen. And I'm like, we still have like another 3 hours here, and I can't take it off because I'm not wearing anything underneath it because it's literally a lingerie corset.
Oh, that was the top.
And it was the top. So yeah, no. And since then, I always kind of liked the idea of flex bone just because it was a little bit more mobile for stealthing, but at the same time, I'm like, but it really doesn't do anything for me except be uncomfortable. Okay. And so I had to own up to that and be like, okay, maybe I need to buy like a grown-up corset, which I got.
A big girl corset.
Yes, and I'm almost small enough to fit back into.
I know.
Because I bought it and then immediately gained 40 pounds.
It's that freaking quarantine shit,
Right. Yeah. Well, it was far before quarantine, but we'll blame it on that.
I blame everything wrong in my life on COVID.
That's right.
Everything wrong. We're like, oh, it's fucking COVID.
Yep.
Now, when it comes to corsetry with your play, is it really for you about the wearing of the corset? Do you incorporate them into scenes in other ways, or is it primarily just the wearing of the corset that kind of gets you going?
I am lucky enough that my slave is a corset enthusiast, but her fetish is not wearing them; it's lacing people up in them.
Oh,
so
perfect.
it's like match made.
How convenient.
Yeah, it and she is fucking brilliant at it.
Good.
So no, we actually incorporate that into play. So part of like the, getting dressed and prepping for an evening to get her in that submissive mindset is to lace me. And I'll let her even sometimes pick out the corset that I want to wear depending on like what we're doing. It's the only time that I'll allow that. Yeah, right. But like when we get to the venue, that is actually kind of like the start of our scene.
Okay.
It's like lace me up, dress me, and when I'm ready, now we'll begin.
I do like that. The one time I've got into dress you before one of our scenes. Well, I got to put your boots on, but I consider that dressing.
It took a while.
Yeah.
Took a while
no, definitely. I can definitely see like that being, because that was a very like, I was like, I don't know what we're doing, but I really like this.
I think lacing someone is very intimate as well.
Yeah.
That's a very intimate service too. Like when you're talking about, the different types of submission, you know what I mean? If you have a truly service-oriented person, acting as a butler or a valet or something like that is just mind-blowing for that.
Absolutely. It was a combination of that and the service side, and also the like, I get to do this, not Spielzeug.
What was your plan?
Because that's specifically like his thing though, is like he does your shoes, and so it's like, I get to do it.
He's brooding angrily in the corner. He's a cuck, it's fine.
So I have it from the other side because for the most part, I am either responsible for lacing myself into things,
right? Which,
thank the gods, I'm hypermobile because that makes that easier. Also doorknobs.
Doorknobs.
Yes.
Doorknobs and hyper flexibility. But my sir has also done my corsets for me. And I will tell you, it is
an experience.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He offered to do mine. She was like,
She's like, no.
I was like, that makes me want it.
I would not have turned you down for getting sir to do your corset. Absolutely not.
Just for the experience. Just want the experience of him standing behind me.
Oh, because he tightened it all the way down, and then to make sure he could get it that last little bit, he put his knee in my back.
Yeah, my sister did that to me for my mother's wedding because she had us wear corsets to that.
I love it.
I wore a corset to somebody's wedding too, but they hate me, so it was funny. I did it on purpose to piss them off.
It was required. My mother insisted.
Yeah,
but they looked fantastic.
Yeah,
it's fun.
But you can use corsets for punishment.
Punishment, yeah, for something. I want to push Spielzeug in one so bad.
You should talk to my alpha, because my alpha really enjoys his corsets.
He looks very handsome.
And he has this amazing masculine cut corset.
I love the look of those with a suit, like instead of a vest, the male masculine corsets. But I also like, he and I do some sissification, so I kind of want to make him look like a bitch.
I have several. Oh my god, we can do that in the
Yes, Nox, I will send you pictures.
I'm thinking
She's
of
like,
this
I'm
with
so proud of him.
stockings with his garters attached to his corset.
I need to show you a picture after this. With
stockings
involved. We're talking about corsets, not stockings. Although they kind of go together. What do you normally pair your corsets with when you're out and about for play or everyday wear or?
If it's everyday wear, I will do stealthing because I have some latex corsets that I wear underneath my clothes, especially if I'm waist training. And I do wear under. A lot of neoprene. For play, usually I will partner them with like leather leggings or thigh-high boots. Here lately, I've been on a weird kick of just wearing the corset itself and a really sexy G-string and a pair of thigh highs.
Yes, Mama, yes, that's what I like to see.
Tits up, ass out.
Hey,
Yes.
Yep. Hey, I'm just thinking about the time that we were in that weird public bathroom together, and we were both in latex, and we were like sounding like a water balloon fight, like trying to readjust after taking a thing. It was like at a restaurant. It was before dungeon. Like, we wore the latex clothes under our regular clothes because it's like a bit of fun, and also I didn't want to have to squeeze into the latex when we got there. We're like, it sounded like a water balloon fight. So speaking of stealthing, it was a bit like, ooh.
No, that was so hilarious too, because it was like, here, help me adjust this, and it's like, I'm sliding too. I can't.
Yeah. I can get in there, but you gotta help me back as well.
Oh my God, that is so true.
You have a handful of thoughts.
You have a handful of
one under. I'm at 4.
Okay.
No, because we brought up Nox had mentioned corset training,
right.
So I was wondering if you have any tips on that, because that's honestly something I'm really interested in, especially getting back into. And it was actually one of our first assignments. My first historical research was the history of corsets, and in that I kind of came back to the conclusion, I actually really do love corsets. I want to start getting back into that, but I'm always kind of at a loss on where to start with training itself.
So for me, I start with those, like the stealthing corsets, like I was talking about, neoprene or something like that. One, to get used to just having something against your skin like that. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that people don't really ever go over is putting a barrier between the corset and your body.
Yeah.
Whether it's like a little camisole or even like a kitchen towel, just to have something against your skin. Because if you're going to do it and do corset training where you're wearing one like every day, that's going to be a hygiene factor for the material itself, right? Because you're not throwing these in the washing machine.
Yeah.
Right. No. Don't put your high-end corsets in a washing machine. Please don't do that.
And for the love of Christ, don't Febreze them.
Yeah, I've seen people do that at cons.
What?
Yeah, I've seen people literally just the furniture Febreze spray, just
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come near that shit and see what happens. Legit though. But that's something, for everyday waist training, like you're talking about. I would definitely invest in a neoprene one because you can wipe them down, especially as you sweat and that you can wipe yourself down. But it gets you in the habit of putting it on every day. It gets you in the habit of having that feeling. Mm-hmm. And so as you start getting the ability to cinch them down and get smaller and smaller, the hard part's already done.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because that really the hard part is, can I sit down? Can I drive? Can I go grocery shopping? And, from a dominant perspective, I love to watch you comfortable. But from a submissive perspective, that could be a pain in the ass.
The practicality isn't there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other reason to wear a barrier between the corset and your skin is you sweat.
Yes.
No matter how prim and proper you are,
I sweat like
you
a pig.
Glisten, you sweat. Yeah. And if you have a metal boning in there, the salt reacting to it can actually rust out your bones. And that causes a whole nother level of problem.
Tetanus. No.
Yes.
But actually,
yes.
That's terrifying. Killed by your corset.
Speaking of things that, can you do these things in a corset? So horror story.
I'm ready.
I ride a motorcycle. If you are unaware.
Yes, I have my champagne. I'm ready.
I ride a motorcycle in my corsets upon occasion.
I think I've done that once.
Because I generally am riding places by myself to dungeons and such, I'm constantly doing it.
Yeah.
Well, I had not trimmed the laces of my corset.
All right, well, we'll start by saying she's alive, so I can.
I'm alive.
I can live the worst possible
thing
factor.
is gone. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going across the Howard Franklin Bridge at 80 miles per hour.
my God.
And all
with
of
the death hazard flapping behind me and my wheels spinning.
Well, I always tuck mine. They're tucked up into themselves.
Okay.
Apparently, they had untucked themselves.
Well, you 80
on-
miles an hour on a bridge.
Well, I was coming from the shed home.
Oh,
Yes.
So
it had been open. It had been chilling out.
it at some point in the 2.5-ish hour ride to my house, it had come out. So I'm going across the bridge, and all of a sudden I feel this like pop, and I'm like, the fuck was that? But I'm still going, so I'm like,
still
whatever,
alive,
gonna
so-
keep going.
Puppy!
Okay, y'all,
Sorry.
there's an adorable puppy dog on the
I
screen, and we
love
have to stop for
puppies.
puppies.
Sorry.
Oh, sweet.
Never.
Not be sorry. We
Hello,
love
Freya.
puppies.
Hello, darling.
But yeah,
She's like,
so
yes, that's me. Yes,
She's like,
I
please.
continued the ride home, which is another like 10 to 15
At this
miles.
point, I might as well.
Well, I don't know what happened. Like, I was just like,
Yeah,
whatever.
that
Like,
was weird,
everything
but okay.
behind me looks fine. The bike isn't
If
misbehaving.
it lost a pipe or
I
something.
tried to get off of the bike,
And, you
and I couldn't get off the bike.
Oh
The lacing had gotten wrapped around the axle.
my
And had spun around the axle, somehow not
killing me.
killing me.
Pulling out my spine.
And the big pop was part of the lacing snapping,
Out of the.
but the rest of me was still perfectly tied in.
Fine.
It was, yeah. So if you're gonna ride a motorcycle, make sure your tails are not only tucked but secured.
I had Spielberg as a passenger last week, and he was in these jeans with like.
no!
They're like essentially they're not as bad as strip pants, but they have like these suspenders hanging down or whatever. And I was like, he rides bitch, and I looked in my mirror and I was like, he's not sitting on them. This is how he dies. This is how he
He
dies.
tried to kill you.
And I pulled over and I was like, you need to tuck that shit immediately. Because if you fall, I know you're not gonna let go of me. You're taking us both down, and I do not want to die.
No, because he's still not that comfortable on the bike. So
He's terrified on the
yeah.
motorcycle.
I mean, I don't blame him. I've been on your bike once. It was mildly terrifying, but somewhat arousing.
He is also aroused by the experience.
So yeah, no, it was. Oh, that's scary, especially because his pants. I mean,
he looks good in those pants,
Oh, they
but I
look
thought
so
he was gonna
good.
die that evening.
That's fair.
That is so
That
terrible.
didn't die.
Mm-hmm.
I'm quite fond of both of you.
No.
But yeah, no. So
Did you have any more thoughts on the? You had a whole handful.
I had two more, but I lost them. So I'm trying to make them come back. It's because they weren't on my nose. I put them down for vanity's sake, and that was a mistake. No, but yeah, because corset training is something I want to get back in, as well as corset stealthing, because I now live back with my family, and so that's going to be a big factor in how
presentable
I can be, because I have a underage little sister.
I empathize, but I cannot relate.
That's fair.
Like,
yeah. So
I empathize with you, but I can't relate.
As much as I would love to just be in corset 24/7, that's the thing. Because for me, it kind of ties into the dollification and
even if you wore it, like,
biblification
over like a button-down blouse, like then it's just like it's a piece of wardrobe.
Yeah.
If you're not like wearing lingerie to your kitchen table with like your underage sister, that's weird, sure. But like if you have like dress pants and a button-down shirt and a waist trainer or corset on, I mean, this is just a sophisticated look. It's very elegant.
It is very elegant.
You know what I mean? It's not like it's not risque or racy in that sense.
It's more so just my mother already freaks out about all sorts of things that she asks questions about that she doesn't want the answer to, even though I'm definitively, do you want this answer? No.
Then don't ask.
Then don't ask.
Don't ask.
Don't ask. But no, and so for me, it also kind of ties into that dollification and bimbofication line that I've sort of been walking and like playing the edge with, because for me, it's when I think of those things, I think of the very kind of societal hypersexualized woman and what that aesthetic looks like to the mass public.
Sure.
And corset training
really fits
achieves that aesthetic in my sense, especially for me, because I already do have the very pronounced hourglass waistline.
Same.
It kind of over exaggerates it, which takes it that little bit further, which I really, really like.
Yeah. Yeah, overlapping fetishes, I think, is something good. Have you found that in your experience, some of your own fetishes kind of overlap with corsetry or the people that you play with? Yeah. What are some of your big ones, you think?
So I, on top of, being part of the leather lifestyle, I am a leather fetishist. So having that smell, even the taste of leather and like leather cleaning products, is, but I also have found that specifically with masculine bodies, I appreciate corsetry more.
Okay.
Because like we're talking about just how classy it looks with a suit or how classy it looks.
Yes.
There's nothing like it. And you know, like and I appreciate like on the feminine forms that are more curvy. Same thing with, you know, talking about the dollification and things like that. Absolutely. It's beyond sexy. But when you pair that with high heels and high heel bondage, you know, rope and restraint. I mean, that right there to have, especially if you're doing, you know, a performance or something like that, and you see it all over the internet. It's easy to find, but women in corsets and high heels that are being suspended in rope.
Yes.
Done.
Just take all you can.
So,
yeah, hands down. But I also really enjoy impact with corsets.
okay. As the giver of impact, or as the bottom within, like, would you like working with bottoms wearing a corset?
I like playing with bottoms who are wearing them, but I also enjoy doing impact while wearing them because I find it pushes my limits.
Yeah, it's definitely a workout. It's already a workout, but I feel like now it's an endurance sport because I can't breathe.
I know. It's a very underrated cardio.
It really is. You know, you think we'd have nicer arms with all the, with all the flogging instead of my little chicken wings.
They're just decoration for when we're flogging.
Oh
Yeah, creating the ripple.
You know what? I like that. I accept.
That's fair. Now, when it comes to doing things like combining corsets with things like rope or impact, have there been any different approaches you feel that you've had to learn to kind of take with it as far as safety precautions go by adding that extra kind of like factor to it?
Constriction.
Yeah, breathing is the big one, obviously, because corsetry can turn into unintentional breath play,
which is why I love it so much.
But that might not be.
It's not everyone's
unintentional,
right?
But that's I mean, kind of it goes into that too because and I mentioned it earlier, corsetry for punishment. Same kind of a thing. I can tight lace somebody and make it breath play and make it a punishment and make you go do house chores. And it's not pleasant. It's sexy as hell for me as a sadist, but it's not pleasant for you at the bottom. But likewise too, in a dungeon atmosphere, if I play with somebody who is wearing a corset, I will loosen it up just so that their breathing is not impacted.
Yeah, that's a very good tip.
Because I have heard kind of like that horror story of people who are like, oh yeah, I played in a corset, but then they hit me and I gasped too hard and then I couldn't get my breath back. And
I pass out.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Specifically with rope, you have to be careful. Rope bondage and corsets, in my opinion, are not for people who are inexperienced in either of those things.
No, that's expert level play there.
If you're wearing the same reason that we tell people not to wear like underwire bras, because that flimsy, cheap little piece of metal could literally puncture your lungs. A cheap corset or even a decent corset and rope done wrong can be a serious risk level. So if you want to do that, definitely
risk aware, but
it's risk aware, and talk to people who are knowledgeable in corsetry and bondage before you jump into that.
We say it all the time on this podcast, rope is edge play.
Yes.
Anyone who says otherwise, don't put it.
Right? Walk away.
Walk away. At least don't.
But I think that's why you tend to see it more with like photography and video than you do like performances, right? Versus actual play. So because it's again, it's more visual impact than it is the sensation impact of the person you're playing with. But I think, I mean, definitely corsetry can be edge play as well. So you're combining two forms of edge play. That's hella dangerous. I don't care who you are, you know, and that takes extra communication, extra consideration. And you get to learn out really fast if your safety shears are worth a shit.
Right.
Oh, I bet.
And then
this is why I have multiple types of safety shears. When I'm
Yep.
Did you?
I had another thing and I lost it.
Okay, that's fine. I lost mine.
Oh wait, I got it.
Go for it.
Hold on.
The other thing about like you see it in pictures and things like that, particularly the more like edgy bondagey stuff.
Yeah.
People don't realize that yes, we can do crazy shit on stage, but there is stuff that we can make a picture of because there's literally someone standing there supporting the body, and then you're ready, and they step out of the scene, they take the shot, and then they come right back in.
Yep.
So
don't trust everything you see on the internet, kids.
Not everything on the internet, not every still frame is going to be something that is reproducible and obtainable to the general public.
Especially as a scene.
Very important disclaimer.
Yes.
What's on your thought?
Oh no, I had it. I got lost it. I had it again. I lost it. Oh, and like for me personally, when it comes to kind of like
journey there, didn't
we did. Welcome to life in my brain. For me personally, especially though, because I do really enjoy corsets. I also have learned to really enjoy rope from the kind of endurance and masochistic type thing. For me, I don't know if it would accentuate the play for me, or honestly take away from rope play for me to do rope play in a corset if I'm being tied around the corset, because part of rope for me is that constriction and the skin contact and the friction between it. If I'm already constricted by the corset, I honestly don't know if I would enjoy rope as much.
I love a good rope corset.
Ooh, yeah. Rope corsets are amazing.
I had one of my very first Halloweens in Tampa, once I got into like the Tampa scene, because I was already in the Orlando scene. I actually wore a full rope corset.
Hey, yeah, I like the rope corset with the rope garters. That's a great look, man.
I was a marionette doll.
That's
waddling around down like Ybor in point shoes and rope. Yes, it was a wobbly. But we talked about a whole bunch of awesome shit about corsets.
Yep.
Let's bust some myths. Okay.
Like,
your eyebrows just went up. You're like, ooh.
She's like, I'm ready.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are like, no matter how much like it's become popular fashion and things like that, and you see it on celebrities, people are like, oh, it's so terrible for your body. It's this, it's that. And so many of those assumptions on what corsetry and corset wearing is are so full of shit.
So are those 6 martinis a day, Karen, but I ain't stopping you, am I?
True. So for me, the first one I'm going to hit out there is that corsets hurt. Corsets
don't have to.
Can hurt. But if you're wearing a corset for everyday wear, it shouldn't hurt.
Right.
Like, it might be a little uncomfortable. It might be uncomfortable to get used to the posture.
Right, which you're probably used to slouching.
Because you're used to, walk around like a sloth all day, gorilla. But they can actually be excellent for your posture. I know a bunch of zebras, people who have EDS like I do, who wear corsets because they help us keep our ribs from dislocating.
Important.
People who have like scoliosis or other spinal curvatures will wear corsets.
Instead of an ugly back brace,
you instead of back brace. I also, when I had a umbilical hernia, so where you get a hernia that's like right under your belly button spot. Very horrible. Totally terrible. They're like, oh, you have to go buy this really expensive binder. And I was like, could I just wear a waist training corset? And they were like,
I guess.
Oh, yeah, no, that's the same thing. And I was like, great, because I've got 3 of those at home.
Then. Thanks. Yeah.
But they can be very, very supportive.
Right.
And honestly, I feel really comfortable in them. Like, I feel, because I'm so wibbly wobbly, especially in my spine, like wearing a corset on a regular basis helps me feel more stable.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah.
That makes sense.
You got one?
Oh, I had a question for you, actually, kind of based around that, because we were talking about zebras or people with EDS and things like that. Now, it can be beneficial because it kind of helps keep it in place, but have you found that it can be riskier because the possibility of kind of lacing too tight and dislocating it, basically, compressing them too much, or how does that work?
So, for those who are unaware, the term zebra is for people who have rare genetic disorders. Because, if the saying is like, oh, if it sounds like a horse and it's got hooves, it's probably a horse.
Right.
Except for when it's a zebra.
Right.
Like,
okay.
Yeah. So that's where we get the term zebra for people, and particularly people who have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or EDS. There are 13 different types. So we are a herd of zebra. For us, so the dislocation of your organs and or bones is mostly fictitious. You don't actually shove your organs in different locations. You can squish it. Now your ribs do float. I have not known anyone who has had additional issues with tight lacing their corsets where they dislocate. Yeah. I don't remember the last time I didn't tight lace a corset. All of mine are very nice and close together because that's how I like to wear them. That's where it's comfortable. I have never dislocated a rib. I can dislocate a rib sitting at this table chatting with you ladies. But we all know what happens.
But not in my corset.
But not in a corset. I've never had it.
Yeah, because I know that kind of is kind of a myth surrounding corsets that, if you lace them too tight, you're going to dislocate something or displace organs. But I didn't know if that was actually a risk factor with that particular those issues.
For the vast majority of humanity, dislocating your ribs has to take like extreme force, right? Yeah, like a big force. Your ribs do not dislocate willy-nilly. If you have a disorder like I do, they can. With the lacing, like being able to adjust how tight they are over our ribs means that we can actually like hold them where they're supposed to be.
Right.
So that they are less frequently falling out of place.
That's fair.
Yeah, like you may feel like your liver is in your throat, but I promise it's not. I promise it's not. That feeling will fade. I promise. You're just being a big squish.
Also, as a big girl, the other trick with like feeling less like you're about to like squish things into the wrong location is I found, even though I have a short torso, because I'm a round bitch, I like long line corsets.
Okay, I gotcha.
Because they come down a little. It comes down and like contains the fupa, right? But it reduces that risk of. For my corsets that are like a shorter or like appropriately sized for my height,
right?
The whole bottom of my fupa is just like
it would be like a crop top for Kaitlyn and I if we wore like a U-sized corset.
The muffin.
No.
The other way.
Yeah. You have a long torso, do you?
I do, yeah. So I prefer long lines, but it's because I do have a natural hourglass, and my bust actually makes the top part a little larger. Yeah. But my circumference from my rib cage to my hips is actually within an inch of each other. Yeah. So for me, wearing a long line actually helps, especially if I'm just standing. Like if I know I'm doing a stand-in model kind of a night, I'm going to wear a long line corset because it also tailors my hips a little bit better.
Yeah, I do like the flare that it creates.
Oh, yeah. That's so sad.
Yeah. I'm always so torn when it comes to length. I think that's my hardest thing. Like my thing is like the jump between like my breast size and my waist size, but also like the length of my torso because while I'm a very tall individual, I have a very, very short torso.
You're all leg.
I'm all leg because Amaka and she might be a little bit taller than me if we both sit up straight.
We sit up straight, she might be taller than you.
No, I think we've measured it. We're exactly the same as long as we're sitting down.
Because like I think I've told on here before, but my high school ex-girlfriend and she's all of 4'11". I'm all of 5'10", and she's taller than me sitting down because my torso is that short. And I find it hard to figure out sort of what length of corset to get because if I get it too long, I can't sit because it goes too far down on my hips. But at the same time, like even the short torso corsets, the waist where it actually starts to pull is under where my natural waist falls.
So we're saying short, but there's like a regular sized one, a long one, and then there's the short one, which you probably should never have tried. The short one is like very small people.
A regular one will still come down under
just
the
before,
waist.
Under your waist.
It'll
before
go
before the real swell of your hips.
Yeah.
I think is
I basically am like a busted souffle,
like
out the bottom. If I have a regular.
That's about like or a sausage that's like
That's how I feel. Honestly, I don't know that I've tried the short. I think I have tried like the regular. But even the regular for me, because where my waist falls, it's very close to kind of where my bust line is. And so when I put a corset on, it starts to cinch around my hips.
If the titties were up here, then it would fit.
Yeah.
So if you're having a properly fitted corset, you're not going to have that.
I think we just need to properly fit her.
She does need to be properly measured and fitted.
There's also the vamp on the front too, because when you talk about the panel, like we're talking about the fupa, when you have the panel that goes down, there's a lot of corsets now, especially that have non-traditional shapes, where you're going to have the cutout where the hip isn't covered, but the panel is going to go longer towards your crotch.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. You can hide your little apron if you need to.
Yeah. I do have a nice little fupa.
If you're insecure about your apron, you can hide it in one of these.
No matter how skinny I get, my butt stays.
Yeah, I think that's one of the myths as well. Is like you don't have to have a certain body type to wear a corset, and when that's not just for feminine shaped bodies as well. Like we talked briefly about masculine or male presenting corsets that are designed for that kind of more rectangular shape. Yeah. Like anyone can wear one. You just have to get your right measurements, and that's where like you really need to get like a friggin' measurement tape, like for sewing, and measure yourself.
And you need to have someone else
measure you, because if you're turning around, you're right.
I tell people doing like chest ropes, never have your bottom have their arm up, because when they put their arms down, it completely changes the structure.
Yep.
It's like a motherfucker.
Which is why I love it.
Right. But that might not be what advised. For.
Well, that's like one of the one of the classes that I taught out here in LA recently was actually geared towards genderqueer identities and gender fluidity, and how to use corsets to manipulate that shape based on what you're trying to showcase.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, because like especially, trans bodies, when you're learning how to really make that outward appearance match how you feel inside, corsets can help you with that, because you're now able to manipulate that shape to have your true identity. And until you really meet somebody that's a corset enthusiast that can show you how to make that fit, that can be really daunting.
Oh yeah, it's daunting. It's daunting for us as well.
Yeah.
But I mean,
even more so. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like if it's daunting for somebody that has a more of a stereotypical presenting identity, that is harder.
Absolutely. That's actually one of my favorite things to show people is like, okay, you have a very stereotypically male presentation. I'm going to show you that I can make you look like a girl, and vice versa. Taking somebody that's very, very overly femme and showing them, I'm going to make you look like a box, and I'm going to put a t-shirt on you, and you're going to look like I'm going to make you look like a boy, and we're going to gender bend this. And that's something that I think a lot of people forget. I think they forget that corsets are still a tool.
Yeah. And it's not just the one shape tool. Like we talked a lot about the hourglass figure because that's what we typically prefer, but that's not the only way to do this.
Right.
Oh, no.
I lost. Wait, do you have something?
Go.
Okay, I don't have a complete thought, but because we were talking about the myth of like the damage that corsets can do to your body and how we've come a far way with that. Do you think that the use of the Edwardian corset has a lot to do with that, because it was the one that makes kind of a more pronounced, your front is very flat, but then your butt is very pronounced because they wanted the bigger it's in the back, and so that one actually did cause a lot.
I've got a thought on that.
Yes,
actually.
I was gonna talk about that.
Well, get in there.
Yeah. So my thought on that is, so I follow a lot of historical costumers. They are academics who study the shit, right? Anyone surprised? Yeah. And so they have done some really great work on the different styles of corsets in different eras. And the thing is when you think about the Edwardian corset, you think of this like giant ass and kind of flat round tit, but all of that is fake. Almost none of that is actually done by the corseting. There is actually like bunting that goes into the top of the corset to give your boobs a more flat, full round.
Okay.
That like, as opposed to like, the slope, the ski slope situation I have, or like, it gives you that round. And then there's also basically butt bustles.
Yeah.
They just, and they're the same kind of thing. They're the same material. They're a batting material that is put into like this little skirt bustle thing that you attach to yourself.
In my closet somewhere deep in the closet.
I have like 6 because I have an obsession with bustles.
I think they're so fun.
I have two.
Yeah. But there were these bustle things. So the corset itself was just your underwear for a lot of time, which is why the idea of tight lacing is actually a more modern idea. Royalty would kind of, sort of, but they've got like chemise, and then you have your underdress, and then you have your overdress, and then you have a corset, and then you have an overdress on that, and then you have a cinch on that.
Yeah.
So what does it matter?
There's not a lot of like tight lacing.
No.
Even workers wore corsets. It was just underwear.
Yeah.
It was just your underwear for the longest time, and to not wear one, even as like a washerwoman, is like, like
I think
me going out with
I think the invention of a metal eye hook is really what the tight lacing took off.
Yeah.
Because before the metal eye hook was really invented, if you tried to tight lace one of these corsets,
you're going
to tear the fabric. You're going to tear the fabric.
And when you move into like the Edwardian period, you do have those additional, even before that, you have those additional clothing pieces that go on that gives you that hyper exaggerated hourglass figure where none of that is real. It is all a facade. It's an illusion. It's a beautiful illusion.
I find really, really interesting because
I will send you links.
Yes, well, because like, so that for me, because I was like, oh, well, maybe this one was actually bad, because even when I was doing my research for like the paper I did with you, all of the like resources on the history of corsetry, it doesn't focus on the addition to, it focuses on the corset itself, and so it plays into that role of, no, this is just the corset doing that, which is obviously misrepresentation when you get into kind of like the really historical
like fashion history. I think is a niche market,
right? And so I find that really interesting.
Women's history is debunked and dramatized by male egos of what we did. I just think it's interesting because for me, I'm like, okay, well then where do we as a whole and our listeners in general find those more factitious type resources? Shout out Bernadette Banner on YouTube. She's amazing. She is one of the ones. And then Kathy Hay. Okay. She's in Europe. She partners a lot with.
How do you spell the last name?
Hay.
Hay. Okay.
Yeah, I think it might be Haye.
We will double check
that. I will link both of them in the show notes. Yeah. But and the two of them also do a lot of things, but they both do excellent demonstrations of reconstruction of historical pieces. Okay. All the way down to the chemises. Like Bernadette has one on making Victorian underwear, and I'm like, I want to do this. I already have the fabric for it. I'm so excited. And then the English Way has a couple. They are actually a historical preservation society in England.
Oh, okay.
And it's a manor house or an estate.
Oh, like a summer house and all that.
Okay. That has been. They do historical tours and things like that. And but they are historical recreationists, I think is the term. Okay. Basically, they are the people of that time period.
I gotcha. So like the kitchen runs,
the bathroom runs. The woman who runs the kitchen, like, oh my god, I want her as my grandma. And I've even seen her like outside of work, and you're like,
they're the ones cooking eggs like in the ash, like that.
Yes, they do it. They do it all as you would have done.
No. I love it.
All that you would have done in the back of the day. These are like trips I want to do.
Can I just go be like trained for domestic service there?
You don't want to have to do that. That would be terrible housework.
Though I do know a couple of butlering schools in England.
You don't want to do it. You don't want to have to be that kind of a maid. Be a nice modern maid. You can wear a corset as a nice modern maid. That'd be much better.
It's fun. One of the stranger shapes that's historical is the shaped corset.
Say again. You cut out, dear.
Sorry. That should be getting better. The S-shaped corset. So it was actually pre-Edwardian, and it was one of the ones that also mimicked scoliosis, which is why they called it the S-shape. And that's the other one that I think a lot of movies capitalized on, especially the older horror movies. You see that a lot in early film. But one of the things, too, about corsets that people forget, they were such an integrated garment with what you wore every day that you pinned your jackets to them. So there were a lot of times that the front panel of your corset was fully visible because your blouse and your sleeves would be pinned to that. Your skirt would be put on top of that. So that front, what we see now with the metal grommets in the front of it and how they kind of loop together, that would be outward facing to the people that you were interacting with. And that would also show wealth and class. So and industrialization, I think, really changed a lot of that.
Yeah.
But that right there is where you would instantly see which class you fell into and where you belonged.
Yeah. It's like the dirndls in Germany, like how you tie your apron or what decoration you have tells you what social class you are. It tells you where you're from, and it tells you if you're available or not.
Oh. There's actually a corset museum.
Where? Can we go?
Oh, shit. Wait.
It's either in England or New York, one of those two places.
you know.
It's either in London or New York. I can't remember. But yeah, Bernadette did a tour through it and got to see like legit. And I was coming in my seat.
That's fair.
That's fair. That's fair. What's on your snoot?
I lost my snoot.
I'm
trying to regain my snoot. Sorry, the kind of like, because Nox referred to kind of like the industrialization of corsetry and like how it's kind of changed it. Now, so for me, when I was first getting into it, a lot of the sources that I was reading, because they were, the regularly available quick fashion, because I am of the age where I came into it, unfortunately, around the same time that the Kardashians were really kicking off with waist training, just because of that's the thing. Just like I was also technically in the same time frame as like the book that shall not be named, but I wasn't there because of the book that shall not be named. And so for me, a lot of the sources I was finding were like, no, get the quick fashion, get the cheaply made to see if you like it, to test it out. Do you feel like that is a valid thing to do entering corsetry, or should you try to go more into the well-made corsets? Do you think that has the possibility to turn people off of corsets if they have a bad
So you're talking
experience?
about like financial accessibility in corsetry. Okay.
No, I am 100% on board with going the cheaper route to see what works for your body, because corsetry can be a huge investment. Yeah. Especially, and like, I mean, come on, with anything fetish related, right?
Yeah.
It once you're in it, it's your thing, you're going to go nuts with it anyway. So I think bare bones, just starting, grabbing a couple of cheap corsets from Amazon or Walmart, because sometimes you can find the cheap and slutty at Walmart.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
I
but
really recommend
it's a great way to
story for those, like your entry point.
Yeah.
Corsets, but Corset Story too can get really expensive really quick.
It can, but they always run sales.
Yeah.
And if you're like, because they do a lot of like
buy one get three, or like
buy two get one kind of things, especially on their like lower end. Right. But they're still going to be either spiral steel or solid steel. Yeah. Like they're not amazing.
Yeah.
But I have a couple of that lasted me. My black one that has the flip locks.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, that's where that came from.
Yeah, because I got all of my first, honestly, all except for one corset that I own were from Amazon, because Amazon runs a special where if you buy it in like June, corsets are considered Halloween accessories, so they're all on sale. So I got 6 corsets for $25.
Which again, is if you're wearing them as a fashion piece, it's fine.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the point Nox is trying to make is that no, you don't have to spend $300 to $500 on your first corset. In fact, I discourage you from doing that, because what if you hate it? Not out this money and the resale value is just not the same, unless you're selling it in a very different niche, in which maybe it will be the same. But you could get a fashion piece either from a reputable corset dealer that has some discount line, or a cheapie, but understand that's not how you're going to feel in a nicer one. So finding kind of tempering your expectations with your first corset to decide if you really like it. Okay. What do you think about it?
It's the Worcester Corset Companies.
The Worcester
Museum.
The museum.
That's who has the collection dating back to like the 1800s.
Yeah, I like that. Maybe they do a digital tour. I don't know. It is COVID, so maybe they do a digital tour.
That'd be nice.
I'd pick.
I think it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do we have some final thoughts on either getting into corsetry, or any kind of like a personal story you'd like to tell, or just kind of like I did this, don't do this, kind of tips and tricks for our listeners?
I think the biggest one, if you're going to, fabric choice matters.
Oh, yeah. We didn't even get into that.
Especially when it comes to personal hygiene.
Oh, yeah.
So one of my favorite stories to tell on myself, I was going through what I like to call one of my hippie phases, where I was embracing nature and, trying to do natural products, and which, by the way, I just cannot fucking do with my body.
Yeah. I'm too sick for that. I need a real deodorant.
Yeah. Yes. I am not one of those girls, so it just doesn't work for me. But I was wearing a black satin corset, and I was using one of the natural deodorants, and unfortunately stained my corset so badly that it was not usable.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Also important to mention.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh no.
So, and even sweat can do that too, but at least that could be cleaned, but yeah, the deodorant stained my corset lining so badly. It was done. Yeah.
Be aware of how your personal hygiene products can affect the things you wear, especially if you're going to invest big money into it.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Makes me so sad.
That's stressful. I don't like that.
No, it's not a happy one. I mean, but I do have funnier stories. Like the time I put a long line corset on while laying in a car, we were driving to the dungeon. My husband was driving, and I was getting dressed, and I was like, I can do this. I got this. So I'm putting the corset on in the car, laying down, and then realized I can't sit up.
Help me.
I have done that.
I am small, and you are a very large man. Please lift me.
I couldn't even get out of the car by myself. Like I had to put my legs out, and it was like the pregnancy lift, right? Yeah. It was awful.
Hoist me out of this seat.
Full servant mode right there.
Right. Help me.
I'm small.
Please help me. All right. Any last tips, tricks, or questions from our side of the pond?
I have recommendations.
Oh yes, recommendations I'll go as well.
I believe it's the New York Library or the Met, one of those two things in New York, currently has an exposition.
Exposition.
Exhibition.
Oh, there we go.
One of those E-words. That means you can look at the thing. But some books for those who can't travel there, because I don't think they have a online thing.
Okay.
Which, hey, if you're listening, put a tour online.
It's
right.
It's Open your museum online.
Accessibility.
The Women in Fashion by Doris Langley Moore. The Corset, A Cultural History by Valerie Steele.
That's on my book list.
Or Costume in Detail by Nancy Bradford.
Okay. These are good books.
Woo.
Fun.
They will all be in the show
If you're interested in corsets in general, not necessarily just the kinky parts of corsets, but as a fashion piece or as a historical or
I did just find a corset fetish book that I want to see.
What's it say?
I have no idea
If it's good
there's the Bound to Please by Lee Summers.
That's also
which I'm all about. But then I just found one called Fashion and Fetishism. Corsets, tight lacing, and other forms of body sculpture.
Ooh.
I like this.
By David. Has anyone read this?
I have
not.
not.
No, but I want to now.
We might have to do a review on this.
All right,
Yes.
That sounds fun.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have time.
We're all in
That's
school.
fair.
There's
We
no
shouldn't,
time
but-
for book club.
No, it's social reading, leisure reading only. All right. Well, then. It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for taking time to chat with us about this very exciting topic. We're glad to have you.
Yes.
We hope to have you back soon.
Yes.
So many other things I want to pick her brain about.
Right. And maybe when the world's not so full of the plague, we'll make a journey come see you.
Yes.
So it's a little California dreaming out there.
Yes.
You are absolutely welcome. All of you. Absolutely.
We'll bring an offering of cheese for your husband. Don't worry.
Aww.
Jesus
I just have to bribe him with cheese?
Yes.
I got this.
Oh, this is easy. I got this.
We're simple people.
Yeah.
I love it.
Simple
Cheese
pleasure.
and beer and wine. We're good.
He's Danish, so just be like.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
He's Danish, so also I kind of want to see you next to him because that man is massive.
He is.
Was he 6'6"? Was he?
He's 6'5", yeah.
6'5".
So he's just barely taller than my alpha.
Oh no, he does.
Is he all?
He's also he is literally a Viking.
Oh.
Yeah.
She's like,
I will bring good cheese.
He could bear hug your sir for sure. Like as far as the shoulder breadth goes.
Damn.
and that's like, sorry, excuse me.
Yeah.
I kind of just want to be scooped up and sit on the shoulder.
That's
Just
fair.
That's
That's
on his
fair.
shoulder. Just watch.
But that's why he's my Viking. That's
Exactly, because when you're done with people, he can just lift you out of the way.
Right.
I'm done.
I love
Take
it.
me away. You know what? We'll have to pick your brain next time we do how DD couples survive.
Yes,
Do double
that'll be
double.
fun.
Fuck of each other.
That'll be a great
We'll
one.
definitely be picking your brain for that
Yes.
too, my darling. All right. With all that said and done, I forgot my line.
And
And remember, trouble comes in 3.
And get fucked.